I could probably count on my hand the number of dates I had while I was in college.
Vince and Mary Mitchell have a different kind of story to tell about the New Canaan experiment.
Oh my God, he's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Her husband agrees with his whole heart. Part of their story is a love story.
Had the New Canaan experiment not thrown us together, I probably would not have met her at all. Because I was not one to attend social events.
The year 1969, the very first class. It was big news in the local paper. While Vince Mitchell and Mary Harris didn't know it at the time, they were on their way to becoming lifelong partners.
The most exciting part for me was when I got back to Norfolk, Virginia, I had a girlfriend. I really had a girlfriend. Well, I came from a similar background as my wife. Well, at the time, she was my future wife. So we arrived in New Canaan. We didn't know each other personally, but we did eventually get to know each other, and she became my wife a little over a year later.
During the course of their day as practice teachers, most of the interns wouldn't see people in their group unless they crossed paths at school.
There were opportunities for us to get together for seminars and also for social events.
We had cocktails before dinner.
During those times, the groups would gather, play card games, exchange ideas, and share their individual experiences. And in the case of the Mitchells, allow romance to bloom.
And on one occasion, they invited both of us to travel with them to New York to see our first Broadway play. And that was a most exciting time for me. In fact, I was teaching Romeo and Juliet while there, and I invited my future wife to come along to see the movie that had just come out of Romeo and Juliet.
Those decades-old memories are images captured in treasured photographs among the Mitchells' personal archive.
It made me very happy that I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Tyndall. He was such a gentleman in every way, and such just a caring teacher. You could tell. I could tell from the first time I met him. The children loved him.
Among their documents, the 1969 assignment sheets for the Norfolk State teachers. Their typed paper has aged and weathered, but their memories are sharp.
The family I lived with were two medical doctors. One was a pediatrician, the other one was a general surgeon. And Dr. Charlotte and David Brown truly embraced us fully, and was so generous to us in every way.
They've kept in touch with the Browns and others over the years. Lasting friendships were formed. It was one of many relationships where the bond didn't break after everyone returned to their normal lives and everyday routines. Mary points out in her case, some of her professional teaching relationships in New Canaan were a bit more complicated.
Some of the white teachers handled the show-off black students very well, and some of them didn't do too well.
Mary remembers some cooperating teachers assigned to student interns were not entirely on board with the New Canaan experiment.
I taught second graders, and a lot of them had never, ever seen a black person. And I was comfortable in my situation as a student teacher. My cooperating teacher, on the other hand, was frustrated with the whole program because most of the teachers couldn't afford to live in New Canaan. They lived in the cities on the outskirts, and she was a little bitter about the fact that they were spending this money on this program for us as opposed to raising their salaries.
Vince says for the most part, he felt welcomed and embraced by the overall community. However, coming from a mostly segregated Norfolk setting, he had to make some adjustments of his own.
So this was a brand new setting for me. And I had never attended an integrated school prior to that time. So this, now to get hired or to begin to work in an all-white setting was something I couldn't have expected.
Mary decided part of her role would be to teach the children that blacks and whites are not as different as they perceived. There was a discussion, she recalls, where the children compared the differences between their white teacher and her. It turned into a teaching moment. Mary says she used her own hand to dispel a racial myth.
And I said, "Do I look like Mrs. Lent to you?" Which is kind of my way. And of course, there was a chorus. Mrs. Lent doesn't have black hair. Mrs. Lent doesn't have brown skin. Mrs. Lent doesn't have purple blood. And that fascinated me. So we talked about the purple blood, and I even went as far as pricking my finger.
Social settings with their host families also proved to be a new frontier for both Mary and Vince.
It was just wonderful to see the difference in how things were done in the New England area versus the way they were done in our home state of Virginia, because I never saw my mother or father have any alcoholic beverages at home. So it was a different setting and a different environment, a different experience.
Over the years, the Mitchells have taken on the task of staying in touch with the original class and organizing reunions.
We were the first group that went to New Canaan. And later on, when we did the reunion in 2009, we found out that this experiment had continued for quite some years. And
almost 10 years.
Yeah, and they had also included other communities. So it was a very positive experience in the sense of race relations.
So I think when people extend their hand of friendship that way, it blesses them and blesses us as well. And I think one of the things we need to do more of is more of that kind of extending the hand of friendship, opening our doors and our hearts to people who are different from us.